I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one can stop me.
Welcome, boxing fans, to another installment of Corner to Corner Boxing. As you can see, we have another great guest with us today. We have California Hall of Fame referee Popeye Ray Corona. Thank you for joining us, Ray.
Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you.
Aside from being a Hall of Fame referee, Ray also runs one of the most successful podcasts in the game today, The Third Man in the Ring. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got into it.
You know what? It was just one of the friends had said, you know what, you should start a podcast, Ray, because let's hear from the referee's perspective. And that's what, you know, it started like actually a year ago, July of 2022. And I thought about it, prayed about it, and started it. January was my first episode, or is that how you call it, episode?
Yeah. With
Jack Reiss, you know. Well, yeah.
Congratulations, because you're right. Like that feedback is that we don't get to hear that perspective from the, like you call it, the third man in the ring.
Yeah, because
right?
you know, fans can be critical, bro. Fans can be critical, man.
And one of the more common themes in the sport is the better a referee is, the less you talk about him, right? He lets the fighters do their thing, and you know, there's not very many instances where the referee is the star of the show. So getting to hear, you know, your interviews with different folks, whether it's commissioners or other referees or fighters, it's really insightful.
Well, with that said, that's what I was telling brother, that you know, in our training, that as far as I know, and I've investigated, California is the most trained state in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, Andy Foster, the executive officer of California, he is just like religiously on our butt, bro. I mean, we can have a bad fight, because as they say, you can have all these great fights and you only remember for your last fight. So with that said, if we have a bad fight, whether we make a fast stoppage and it wasn't, you know, you didn't explain it right, why'd you stop that fight, you're going to be sat down. You know what I mean? But with that said, every 6 months we have to go to mandatory training, and if you don't go, you won't work. So with that said, Tom Taylor, Jack Reiss, they're personally my mentors, and when we go to training, man, we just go through scenario after scenario. And even though some of it's the same old stuff, like Jack always says, like Tom always says, be ready for anything, you know. And I think I was telling you guys earlier, the best compliment you could give a referee is, who did that fight? You know what I mean? The less I'm seeing, the less the fight's not about a referee, the fight's about the fight. But at the same time, we need to make sure the rules are enforced and the safety of the fighter, you know?
So you mentioned something that I want to address up front. And this isn't often discussed, right? But you mentioned it, so I want to bring it to the table. As fans, we are sometimes critical, a lot of the times, of referees, of fighters. And it's usually someone like me or Louie throwing their bag of hot Cheetos at the TV. Like, I would have slipped this, I would have countered with that, or that's a bad stoppage. What we don't realize is that us as fans, we have the privilege of instant replay. We have the privilege of multiple camera angles, and we don't have that pressure.
And the commentators.
As well. So I'll give you a brief example, and I would like for you to comment on this. So my children play sports. They're both athletes, and I deal with a lot of referees. And there were instances, my younger son plays soccer, and in the sidelines you hear all these soccer moms and all these soccer dads screaming and being disrespectful towards the ref. So the league said this: okay, moving forward, the parents have to go and be trained as a referee. Wow. And after they did that, todos calladitos, no one said a word, because it's a lot more difficult than you think. So for that, I want to give you props, Ray, because it's not just about the fans keeping the boxers or the referees or the officials accountable. If we want boxing to be the best sport in the world, which I believe it is, the fans have to keep each other accountable as well, and we have to be better fans. Let's just call it what it is.
I mean, I mean, with that said, you're totally right. I mean, if any fan out there wants to be a referee or a judge, or just want to know what we're trained to think, Jack Reiss has a class once a year, soularbiter.com. If you guys ever want to look at it, it's called soularbiter.com. You look at it, there's a fee obviously to take the class, and he's having one this September 1st, but he gives you from the ground one what we're trained to do, how we're supposed to look at a fight, you know, our degree. You know, there's only a small window to stop that fight.
Yeah.
You know, Jack always says, you got to think of that fan that spent his hard work money and he's in the cheap seats, and you got to let him know what you're doing when you're taking a point, or when you're stopping a fight, or if it wasn't a knockdown and the guy tripped with his feet. You got to think of him as much as you got to think of that guy that bought those ringside seats, you know. But yeah, if any of you fans want to be a referee, a judge, the first step is you got to take that class, soularbiter.com. Yeah.
That's a great call out, and we understand as an active referee, there are certain topics or things that you just can't talk about, or certain questions that you can't answer. So we'll do our best to be respectful.
Well, I mean,
about that.
With that said, I'll just put it out there. I can't speak on upcoming fights, because if I get that fight as a referee, and there's a controversy, maybe I stopped it too early, or stopped it too late, or I took a point, somebody will say, hey, well, on the podcast he had said this, and he had said that. So, you know, if you ask me about it, yeah, it'll follow me. But if you ask me, you know, I could say, hey, yeah, I think it'll be a good fight, but I won't comment who I think will win or anything like that.
That makes sense. I think something to note is that as a referee, you're held to a much different standard than fans. And fans, we really have to understand that. As I was preparing for this interview, I was going through BoxRec, and by the way, you gotta stop doing so many fights. When I log into BoxRec, it takes a lot of time to download, because Popeye Ref, you know, you did like 4 fights that weekend or something like that. So it actually says on there, California rules KO. So as a referee, you're representing the state of California. It's a much different degree, a much different standard. So we're respectful of that. We're going to be respectful of that in this interview.
Well, with that said, I'm sure you guys know, when I got suspended in 2016, you know, I got in a fight at the Golden Gloves Riot. And, you know, prior to that suspension, I was a thorn in Andy Foster's side. You know, why don't I get this fight? Why didn't I work here? You know, I'm not gonna put a front on. You know, I felt, you know, I'm ready for that fight. I'm ready for that. But after that incident, whether you think I was wrong or right, I was protecting my son. I got suspended, you know, for 1 year. And 6 months into that year, I got an email from the state, and it just said, we're not going to renew your license. And as God is my witness, bro, I cried, you know, because, you know, I think without boxing, my outlet, it'd really be hard to stay focused. You know, I love my wife, I love my children, my grandkids, but I just felt without my outlet, I'd probably get back into the neighborhood issues, politics, whatever. And I got on my knees. I said, you know, God, give me this back. And in my opinion, I'm the definition. I didn't know what I had until I lost it.
Wow.
So, you know, I prayed, me and the wife prayed, and a year later, Andy Foster gave me my license back. And man, I have changed my whole attitude. I don't say nothing. You know, we get our fights on Soul Arbiter. Yeah. It's a referee thing. Yeah. We're on there with basketball referees, football referees, Major League Baseball. So that's how we get it. So when I get a fight, I don't thank you. I just push accept, you know. But yeah, you know, you don't know what you have until you lose it, and man. So yeah, 2017, I was the most worked referee in the world, bro.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm blessed, bro.
Do you think, obviously, you know, after the suspension, your perspective changed on which fights you're willing to take? So it sounds like you became more open to taking, you know, more fights. Do you think that as a referee, the more fights you ref, it's like a training in itself where it makes you better at your job?
Oh yeah, every fight, brother, is never think, in my opinion, never think you arrived.
Yeah.
Never think, hey, you can't tell me. I know, you know. Again, never think you arrived. You're always learning. There's always going to be something in there that could happen. like I've never had a double knockdown. So when it happens, you know what? With all the training, I pray to God I react the right way. You know, I've never had nobody fall out of the ring. You know what I mean? So you hope you react right, but that's what a constant training is. You know, and just like on my podcast, I don't want to be critical of the other officials, but I'm telling the other officials, you need to train. Don't ever think that you arrive, because that's when the mistakes will happen. You know.
Can you walk us through? You mentioned every 6 months you have to go through mandatory training.
Us and the MMA guys as well too. So,
and again, you know, being respectful to what you can and can't say, can you give us a small glimpse into what that training looks like?
Well, we just Andy Foster and Mark Ralia, the lead supervisor, they'll pick a place where we're gonna go, whether it be a gym or you know, up north. We all go there, and the MMA guys will have it in the morning. We have it at night. If you do both, you got to go to both. You know.
It's an actual gym, like a boxing gym.
Boxing gym, and they'll usually have a cage and a ring. And Jack and Tom and whoever else. Sometimes they mix it up, but it's mostly always Jack, Reiss, and Tom. And in my opinion, Jack's
he's the man.
He's the man. Man.
Yeah.
He's the man. He's like the encyclopedia. Tom is too. You know. And we go there, and it's kind of like a barbershop talk. We talk, and then we just go through scenarios, and we go through, because it's a closed session, we'll go through the fights where referees did mess up. You know what I mean? And it's on film. What could have that guy done better? Or what should you have done, Ray? What should you have done, Tom? What should you have done, Ivan, Rudy? You know, all the referees. And the same with judging. You know what? They'll have 6-7 fights on film. And to me, judging is like, it's hard, bro. It's hard. We were talking, you know, the fans have commentators. They have instant replay. They have the camera view. So it's easy to sit there and say, you know what, I don't think he won that round. Or you know what, he did win that round. But remember, the judges only have that one view. Either the referee's in front of them, or they're in the far corner, or maybe that fan likes boxers and the other fan likes brawlers.
Right.
You know, the boxer can hit you 5 times, but that puncher hits you just a 1-2. So who won, you know?
The other thing to take into consideration is the crowd.
That's right.
Because the crowd, like, they roar even if a punch misses or whatever's happening. It can influence the judge or even the referee.
You mentioned something really powerful a few moments ago, where you said that you found this new appreciation for what you have, for the blessings that you have, and the opportunity of being a referee, because it could have been taken away from you. And you mentioned that without that outlet, you were fearful that you could maybe return to, you know, a past life. For those of us that don't know, for our viewers that do not know the story of Popeye Ray, can you tell us about how you were growing up?
Oh yeah, well, I grew up in Bassett, California. That's in the city of La Puente, El Monte, Baldwin Park. I don't have any blood brothers, but my mom and her sisters, we all lived in one house. So I had cousins that I consider my brothers. We grew up in the same household. So it was 5 of us and 5 girls. And you know, back in the 70s, that was common, you know what I mean? Yeah. You know, tias living with each other and cousins. So we grew up there, and just my brothers were boxers, so I just going to the gym was just like a natural thing, you know. But you know, my mom was very abusive, and she was very promiscuous. May she rest in peace. You know, we made peace before she passed. But I had many fathers, many boyfriends in and out of the house, so it just was very abusive, you know. In the 70s, mind you guys, in the 70s you could beat your kid in the market, and nobody give it a second thought.
There's no smartphones.
There's no smartphones. But even then,
they didn't give a fuck.
They didn't care. They didn't care. I mean, actually, the neighbor can kick your butt. The neighbor's mom can kick your butt, and the mom wouldn't even think nothing about it, you know. Right. Everybody took care of everybody in that sense. At the same time, I remember probably as far as kindergarten, walking to the pool with 6, 7 kindergartners over a mile away, and nobody bothered us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nobody bothered. That's unheard of nowadays.
Different
you know?
times, yeah.
Different times, you know. But so you know, I grew up like that, and through the abuse, and my mom actually was more abusive to my oldest sister, but she beat me one time. I remember I was like in the 2nd grade. She beat me so bad, she sent me to school, and I just remember the cops taking me away for a couple of weeks. So I went to a foster home. And that was pretty traumatizing, you know, because I didn't understand what happened. You know, I just figured, but she must have beat my ass pretty good, you know, for back in the 70s for that to happen, you know. Yeah. So yeah, and from there, it seemed like being away from my mom a couple of weeks, it just snowballed into getting into trouble, getting into, you know, got into the neighborhood. I'm from Bassett Grande. I'm not an active gang member, but I'm still a gang member. And, you know, from county camp, youth authority, prison, 2 terms. And, you know, it just kept snowballing. I had an older brother, my brother Pete. He did 35 years straight. And God is good. He got out, and he's doing well now, you know. But pretty much the same neighborhood as everybody else, you know.
Got it.
What are your thoughts? I know you're not an active gang member today, but what are your thoughts on how gangbanging was when you were growing up and what it's like today or in the last recent years? I
feel, my opinion, it was tougher back then. It's just crazier now. And what I mean by tougher, you had to go to the other side. Now, mind you, some of the barrios, even back then, went to school with each other. Yeah. And they tend to be like, well, I'll catch you after school. But where I grew up, it was the suburbs of Los Angeles, so we had more space. Where I grew up, only Bassett went to Bassett, Puente only went to Puente, and El Monte went to El Monte and Baldwin Park. So as soon as we seen each other, it was on. It was just on site. You see each other, you have to attack. So with that said, there was a lot of fist fighting, and through the boxing, you know, it gave me confidence. I'm not saying I've never been busted up. I have. You know, I probably lost more fights than I've won. You know, yeah. But it just was a natural thing to get into fights. And my 2 older brothers, they were very good street fighters, very good boxers. My brother Peter, who went to prison for the 35 years, he was a Golden Glove champion twice. So I really looked up to him, and my brother Willie was pretty good too. And it just. And that's why I say back then, it was more of a 50-50 chance somebody would pull out a gun. Yeah. You know, but they always pulled out weapons, but a gun was like a 50-50 chance, you know. Nowadays, I mean, it's funny, I think I said this in another testimony. This is about 15 years ago. I was at the boxing gym. I work with the kids a lot. And I told the kid, you know, there was a bunch of cholitos outside. And I told him, hey, why don't you guys come inside, man? You know, learn to get them up. I try to get them in like that before I tell them, hey, change your life. I go, hey, in case you got to get them up, you know, with the enemy. And this one kid, very arrogant, he said, fight. I'm not going to fight, man. I'll just pull out a gun, man. And it just hit me like...
It's a different mentality.
There's no, you know what I mean? Crazy thing, that kid got shot 9 times. He lived, though. Got shot 9 times, you know? So I guess somebody pulled out a gun a little faster than him, you know? Yeah. But, yeah. That's the difference I see, you know, and you know what? As a Christian, guys, whether you agree with me or not, it's just these days there's just no respect. I mean, when I was young, you walk into a market or you seen an older vato, a homie, you wouldn't even look at him out of respect. You knew he wasn't your homeboy if you didn't know him, so you knew he was either an enemy because nobody liked Bassett. So I wouldn't even look at him. I just gave him respect. You know what? He's older than me. But now I actually go to the market and I got youngsters mad dogging me. You know? Wow. I'm like, wow, what's that about? You know? Yeah. But it is what it is. You know.
Talking to old, you know, older guys that grew up in the neighborhood, I get the sense that, you know, back in the day, even, you know, I was born in the late 80s, so I kind of grew up in the 90s, early 2000s. Even through that time, it seemed like your rep was earned in the street, yes. Like you said, throwing them up, and street fighting. Where now, like, you know, like that young kid said, I'm not gonna fucking fight. I'm just gonna pull it out and and start dumping, right? So it seems like the priorities on where people get respect in the street has shifted from like what you can do with your fist or the balls that you have versus how many people you can shoot or kill.
Yeah. It's it's just getting real. Like I said, that's the only difference I see. My days were tougher, but these days are crazier. With all the mass shootings, I just don't understand the mentality. And I'm thinking, it's the way our kids are being raised nowadays. There's some little leagues, everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in little league, the loser, hey.
You're absolutely right about that, Ray. For me, sports are supposed to prepare you for life, right?
That's right.
That's what it is. That's what sports is. That's where you learn how to win and you learn how to lose. But if everyone is winning, what's going to happen when you lose in life? I completely agree with you with that.
I mean, if you fans see my last interview with Chris Levine, the MMA fighter, he actually said, you know what? When you lose, it teaches you to be a better winner. You know what I mean? And when you lose in sports, it's going to give you that drive, that ganas to, I got to just try harder,
Yeah.
But nowadays, everybody gets a trophy, and even the kids that do win, they don't feel that joyful because look at the losing team got the same size trophy.
Everybody's spoiled now.
Everybody's spoiled. Nobody wants to hurt nobody's feelings. That's just like, I'm not saying it's right, but like bullies in school. As long as they're not using weapons, get your butt over there and fight them, man, like a man.
You have to learn to stand up to them.
My brothers, in the 70s, the tough family had respect. And my family was one of the tough families. There was a couple of families but we were considered tough because my brothers were boxers. So in the street, they were notorious, But when somebody pick on me, and I don't even remember ever doing that, but I already knew better. Don't go tell one of my older brothers. Let's see, get your butt over there and fight him now. You know what I mean? And that was just part. I remember I got bullied in the 8th grade by a senior from Bassett High School. They had came down to play a scrimmage at Torch Junior High, and when I was in the ring, in the gym room, he came in after with all the seniors, and he just picked a fight with me, because I was from Bassett and he was like a jock.
Yeah.
And I told my brother, and he goes, "What'd you do?" I go, "I was afraid," and he slapped me, man.
Yeah.
Don't you ever, you better fight him, know. And bullies are what create a man to. How do we expect our soldiers to go off and fight and defend our country if, every little time they get their feelings hurt in school, I'm going to call the police, I'm going to call. Now, mind you, if there's weapons involved or they're trying to jump you, okay, that's something different. But if somebody's picking on you in school, man up.
Yeah.
Man up. Bullies look for victims. They don't look for fights.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Most of the time, they once you fight, even if they
you
fuck
lose.
you up, they're not gonna.
Yeah, they just actually become your friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody's been bullied, man. But nowadays, like, oh my God, they gotta get suspended, expelled. I'm like, my God. And then we expect our kids, our men, to go off to war for us.
Yeah.
So you touched on a couple of different topics there about growing up, and it sounds like you had a certain type of, I'll call it morals, right? Where you stand up for yourself. And I heard in a previous interview that when you arrived at state prison, you were attacked by somebody, and it sounds like he hurt you pretty bad. And the two options were either get it back or roll it up. Yeah,
that wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds like, from what I hear now, that's going on in California prison politics, is that the yards, there's no more general population or PC. They're all integrated, because it sounds like there's so many people that are rolling it up that they just don't have space to house them, so they integrate them. What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think led to that?
In my opinion, guys, this is the last. I'm a Christian, and these are the last days. Even in the underworld, the devil's attacking that system. We know. As a Christian, I feel I'm always being attacked, but again, even in the underworld, there's just havoc, bro. There's just havoc, and it's a sad world when I still stay in contact with a lot of my homeboys that are in and out, and they just say it's a mess. That's their exact words. It's a mess. You don't know who you're next to. You could be next to a child molester, a rat, a dropout, and there is a difference, in my opinion, a dropout to a rat, and it's just it's ugly in there, It's ugly in there, but you got to change your ways if you don't want to go back, It is what it is,
Yeah.
I think the 90s was pretty much the last time from what I hear, and a couple of the referees are correctional officers. There's more dropouts than there are active now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think I still speak as a Christian. I try to always do. If you're gonna play the game, guys, you gotta follow the rules. How can we try to be a gangster on a Monday and then be a rat on a Tuesday, and then it's just like I see this podcast with who's the guy that ratted on John Gotti? What's his name?
Takashi 6ix9ine. Oh.
No, Sammy the Bull.
Oh yeah.
Sammy the Bull. Now you know what? Obviously, Sammy the Bull was a tough guy. I'm not gonna say he wasn't, but you crossed the line. Now we're making him a star. What are we showing our children? What are we showing our children? We're making this guy a star, and then he's arrogant about it. And
like he's proud of.
Yeah, like he's proud of it.
Yeah.
But I have a close family member that's a dropout, and he straight out says, "I crossed the line, and I'm not going back, and I'm not gonna poke the bear." And those are the exact words. I'm not gonna poke the bear, which means I'm not gonna go out there and be on a podcast or go to the neighborhood and try to be one of the fellas again. He knows what he did, and at the same time, I have a couple other homeboys that that are dropouts, and they're all over Facebook.
Talking shit.
Talking stuff, and I'm telling them, because I communicate with them on phone, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but I haven't seen them face to face, but I communicate, and I go, if you really love my neighborhood, if you really love the neighborhood, when you're on Facebook, you're putting the neighborhood on blast. Yeah. You're pretty much telling them, or telling the main heads, yeah, I'm in my neighborhood, and they're not doing nothing to me. And what's going to happen, all of us are going to get a green light on us. That's as far as I'm going with that. But again, we're making the Sammy the Bull a star. You cross the line, dude. Just retire. Go, do your thing. But to be on, and then he attacked one of the Christian, and he wasn't a dropout, Franchetti.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. This guy did his time. He didn't rat on nobody, and then Sammy the Bull's gonna call him out on a podcast. Like, come on, bro.
Speaking of Michael Francesi, he's famous. There was a scene in the movie Goodfellas where they're going into the bar and they're talking to different people. Hey, that's Michael Francesi. Yeah. So Goodfellas. There's also a scene within Goodfellas that it's the most famous scene about the Lufthansa heist, right? But I've heard of a different heist, the Wienerschnitzel Heist. Can you tell us about that one? I think that's a really good story for our listeners.
My big robbery career.
Yeah.
It just I laugh about it now, but I used to get clowned when I was in the jail. I'm saying, but you know what? It wasn't a planned thing. We were at a party, and I think what it is, I just live close by, so I was walking home. I go, let me go eat, So there was a Wienerschnitzel there, and I went to go eat, and that's just where my mentality was. I was fresh out of prison, and I just thought I was God's gift to gangbanging, and to be honest, I didn't care. I didn't care about nothing. I didn't care about tomorrow. I didn't care about nothing. And I said, let me rob these guys before I leave, So I robbed them. I just walked up to the window and said, give me your money. The guy gave me his money. No, I just walked away. And the very next day, we went to another party, and me and the homeboy were coming back. He goes, hey, let's eat, I didn't think nothing of it to tell him that I robbed this place. So we're sitting down to eat, and the guys from Puente drive up, and we get in a fight. We start fighting. There was 6 of them and only 2 of us. So we were actually doing all right, and the cops drove up as we were fighting. Boom, about 12 midnight, 12 a.m. And they have us all on the ground, and the girl comes out and she goes, "Hey, that guy robbed me yesterday." So yeah, I ended up going to prison for that, But I remember, a couple of guys out of Carilla, they're like, "Hey, the weenie bandit." So that was my big.
There's a famous quote from a movie called Menace to Society, where the I don't know if you've seen it, but the opening scene, these guys walk into a liquor store to buy some beer, and they get in an argument, and one of the guys ends up killing 2 people.
Yeah.
And right after the scene, the other guy says, "It's funny like that in the hood sometimes."
That's right.
You just never know. You went to get something to eat,
and
then you went again the same night, and then you ended up fucking catching a robbery charge for it.
Yeah, my homeboy Lalo, may he rest in peace, he passed away. We were out at the park drinking. It's like a hot summer day, and he comes running in. He's all pink. So what it is, he had robbed a bank, and the bag exploded. That's what after that we used to call him the Pink Panther.
The Pink Panther. So we talked about how even like in the prison system, even out in the neighborhoods, in the street, before there was this underlying code. And I want to transition back into boxing because I feel like some of that code has helped you. And I can think of 2 things. One, I've heard different interviews where you say, win or lose, you're going to remember me, right? I've heard you say that. And when we really think about it, that's an underlying sentiment in boxing. If you think of the biggest boxing story of all time, Rocky, right? Raging Bull. That's what it's about. Hey, you may win. You may get your hand raised. But when I walk out of this ring, you're going to respect me.
That's right.
So if you can tell us a little bit about how maybe, your upbringing, even though it seems like different than where you're at now, you're representing California, how did it help you become a better referee?
As far as refereeing in the ring, thank you for the compliment, but I look at it like when we were young, the best way to sharpen your fist fighting skills is we'd fist fight each other. Whether it turned into an argument or I'm sure you guys know, there'd be 10, 15, there's always 2 friends that are just constantly bickering.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're friends, but they're just constantly, even if it's behind a basketball game, football game. Well, in my days, go ahead and fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as soon as it got a little bit out of hand, then we'd stop it. Or when you knew that friend, you like them both, but you knew that friend had enough, so you stop it. Or vice versa.
Yeah.
To me, when I get in the ring, and some people say, "Are you doing that to be a showboat?" It's a nervous reaction. I don't know if I always do this.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to notice it more. I'm always telling myself, calm down, Ray, relax, Ray, don't jump the gun, Ray. And that's me, that's my nervous reaction. But that's the way I see a fight. I like them both, and I need to know when he's had enough or vice versa, you had enough, and that's when I'll stop it or let it go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm trying to tell myself, let him prove his point. Let him prove his point.
Yeah.
And to me, if I keep it like that, so far, God, thank you, God, I haven't had any issues. But it's funny you say that because there's a coach here in Pomona.
Yeah.
He hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
He hurt my feelings. And if he watches it, I told him, I go, you know what, that was wrong what you did. He called, I was supposed to do his son's fight.
Yeah.
He called the state and says, I don't want Ray Corona doing my son's fight.
Wow.
And they told me, hey, Ray, this guy called the state and says he don't want you doing it. I go, why? And so he goes, I don't know why. And it just bothered me the whole night. So I knew the trainer. I went up to him, I go, hey, bro, so what's this I hear you called the state? He goes, yeah, Holmes, I don't want you doing my son's fight because you stopped fights too early.
Really?
I just go, is that right? But yet on that same page, Andy Foster, the executive officer of California, has said twice in our training, you can't blame, you can't accuse Ray Corona for stopping fights early.
Yeah.
So that's like borderline, you should have stopped a little early.
Right.
And then this guy to do that. In my defense, I looked into you, and a lot of the trainers say, he always tries to get sparring for his son to beat the guy down.
Wow.
So in other words, you called the state because you want your son to beat the hell out of somebody, and you want him, to shine like that. And to me, that was wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sparring isn't about beatdowns, fights ain't it. Like Andy Foster said when I interviewed him on my podcast, he had said, I sanction fights, not beatdowns.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? And when this guy did that, I thought to myself, you know, do I stop fights early? But you know what? I stop it. I would like to think that I stop it just in time.
Yeah.
Yep.
How do you think?
Well, I'm glad I got that off my chest.
Thank you for sharing. It seems like you needed to.
Yeah, I did, bro.
But yeah, I was gonna bring up that quote by Andy Foster because it really resonated with me. Like Carlos and I don't know. We've both been watching boxing for as long as we can remember since we were little kids, and to hear it put in the terms that we sanction competition, not ass whoopings.
Yeah.
Even to this day, watching boxing for over 25 years, it resonated with me, and it really gave me another perspective into what the referee and the commission's job really is in the fight, right? And a lot of times, like we touched on earlier, fans can be really critical about what referees do or what officials do or calling the doctor in, whatever it is. But you know that's a great quote to drive that point home.
And if I could say something to the fans, I always notice, I'll even get comments, well, who has that guy fought? And who has that guy fought? He hasn't fought nobody. Mind you, if you really know boxing, and if you as a trainer, or you as a trainer, you have a young new boxer, are you going to let him fight Tank Davis right away?
No.
Are you going to let him fight, if he's a heavyweight, Andy Ruiz right away?
No.
You have to build it.
Yeah.
You have to build them. Do you pick your fighters? Do you pick the fights you need to fight? Of course you do.
Yeah.
Look at my, and some of the fans are like, that guy hasn't fought nobody. He's barely coming up, man. It takes time. You got to build them. You got to pick and choose your fights. Here's a quick story. I won't say names. Las Vegas, big time amateur. I mean, he had all the titles, Golden Gloves, Nationals, International, big time, little guy, like 125, 130. His first fight, he comes to California. I did his fight. He picks a fighter from right here, Henry Ramirez's fighter. Had 7 fights, 7 knockouts. Fights this new amateur coming into the pros. You guys look it up. First pro debut, fights a guy with 7 fights, 7 knockouts. Why would you take that fight? Because he's got all this amateur pedigree, and this guy has 7 fights. This guy, Henry's fighter, beat that. He went all 6 rounds, but beat the living crap out of him.
Yeah.
Whole different. Amateurs is whole different from pros. But that was a bad choice by the manager, by his trainer. Just because he's got all this pedigree doesn't mean he can. Pros is different. Gloves are smaller, no headgear. Even though it's 3 minutes, it's a whole different game. Yeah. And you know what? I've never, he might be still around, but I've never seen that fighter from Vegas.
Those type of beatings can change a trajectory.
I mean, he came out, both eyes were shut, bleeding through his nose. I mean, I was close to stopping it, but his amateur, he just kept coming. Like a typical amateur, it's just nonstop. Where this guy was just landing hard shots. And I just thought to myself, why would you take this fight? And this is what I'm telling fans. When you're critical of a fighter, well, who has he fought? He hasn't fought nobody. You're building him. And then when it comes to the top level, in my opinion, I don't know the details. Why hasn't Canelo fought Charlo? Why hasn't Charlo fought this guy? Sometimes the fighters want too much money from the promoters to fight so and so and so. If I'm a promoter, my main goal is to make money. You know what I mean? So if I gotta pay you more to fight Joe and John to fight him, it's just, it's not worth it. You know what I mean?
There's a lot that goes into the equation. And the reason why I think your podcast is so valuable is because you offer the perspective from an insider and from the commission as well, where a lot of fans, quite frankly, we just don't know. We're not educated on the rules. You mentioned a few times, which I found surprising, even as a boxing fan, where you say, look, the main thing is protection. We have to just protect the fighters. But the commission also says we got to do what's right for boxing. We've got to do what's right for the fans. And I don't think a lot of fans know that you incorporate that into your training.
Yeah, thank you. With that said, just like it's like they were real critical of Jack Reiss with Tyson when he fell in the first Deontay Wilder fight. Remember, he dropped. He gave him the 8 count. He beat the count at 10, and then he told him, walk over there, walk over here. Now, if you count the seconds, it was probably 15. Yeah. Oh, he gave him a long count. No. Our job as a referee is to make sure when he gets up, he still could fight. When a fight, you've seen fights where the guy is just throwing, there's nothing on it, but because he's in such physical great condition, his body is working. But if his brain is not working, well, you're looking for trouble, You don't want these guys to die. You don't want these guys. I always say in my pre-fight instructions in the dressing room, nobody sees that. You know what? If you're in trouble, I'm telling the fighter, if you're in trouble, you're in trouble. I'm going to stop the fight. I'm going to tell you, get out of there, fight back. If you don't get out, you don't fight back, you're telling me you can't get out. You can't fight back.
Right.
I'd rather you be mad at me today than your mom hating me in the morning. You know what I mean?
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
And what I want to point out is a lot of people don't understand this. In boxing, the knockout, like a Mike Tyson type of knockout or a Deontay Wilder type of knockout, is not the dangerous one where a dude cracks you with something on the chin and you go to sleep. That's not the dangerous type of knockout. The dangerous one is what you said, where a guy gets up, he might not be all there, and he takes an extra 5, 6, 7 punches that rattle the brain and can lead to bleeding or whatever. Those are the dangerous type of fights, right? Where a guy's taking prolonged punishment that's unnecessary.
Yeah.
So with that said, you mentioned Jack Reiss, who you call a personal mentor and a professional mentor. And obviously we have a Hall of Fame referee here with us. So what we want to do is we brought a few fights. These are inactive fighters. These are famous fights that boxing fans will know. And we want your expert opinion as a referee on some of these scenarios so that you can give us insight as how to a referee will go about these situations.
Yeah, all right.
So I got the first one here. Tyson.
You want to play it?
Yeah, Tyson versus Holyfield. So we all know the situation, right?
When he bit him?
Yep, when he bit him.
And you mentioned a lot of referees were correctional officers. Mills Lane was actually a judge, right?
Yeah.
I met him in youth authority too.
Yeah.
So, the first thing that stands out to me about Mills Lane, legendary referee.
Let's get it on.
Yeah, man, that guy. But what struck me about him is that he always had control of the fight.
Yes.
And I know you refereed Mike Tyson a couple of years ago versus Roy Jones, but when he refereed Mike Tyson, he was biting dudes in the ring. That was like an unhinged, dark Mike Tyson that was at the time probably one of the scariest guys in the world. Mills Lane, I think, did a great job of making sure that not only Mike Tyson but Evander Holyfield knew who was in charge in the ring.
Yes.
How do you do that as a referee when you're in there against two guys that are both alpha males?
You set the standards in the dressing room before the fight. You got to take control right there. If you don't take control there, then they're not going to listen to you. Sometimes you go in to give a pre-fight instruction and they got earphones on. They're listening to music. First thing you tell them is turn that off. If they don't want to look at you, that's on them. But you're gonna have I want your full attention, And some fighters, whether they're in their game mode or they're being a little disrespectful, because some fighters you ain't gonna tell me what to do, I won't say any certain names, but I've been in there with big names to watch other referees try, and they won't look at them. All right, fine, but you're listening, And if you don't take control there and tell them what you expect from them in the fight, then it's not going to happen. Well, it's not going to happen. But again, you got to, like Jack and Tom tell us, you got to be ready for anything. And that, who would have thought? You know what I mean? And Mills Lane handled that to a T.
Yeah.
To a T.
So we're gonna do a few more. This one is a little bit of a different situation, but
that's my best, my hero.
I wanna.
I actually met him 2 weeks prior to his death, Alexis Arguello.
So this fight is the Alexis Arguello versus Aaron Pryor.
Yeah.
It's the first fight.
We're not going to do
round.
cocaine, are we?
Well, actually,
I'm joking.
so we all know what's happening in this fight, but what I want to get your opinion on, as a referee, when Aaron Pryor is here in the corner, his trainer Panama Lewis says,
He's got a history of his own. You know?
He does. So with that in mind, he says, "Give me the bottle that I mixed." I know as referees, sometimes you go into the corner of the ring. I don't think Panama Lewis will say that in front of a referee. He's probably, he probably knows what he's doing. He won't say that. But in a scenario where you heard something like that, what's your jurisdiction as a referee to maybe take some action on that?
Give me another bottle. The one I mixed.
Well, in California, though, and again, to praise my boss, Andy Foster, we have inspectors, those guys in the black suit. Nevada has them too. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
Everything is checked in the dressing room. They don't drink Gatorade in California. You can't have anything in California but water.
Right.
And everything is checked. You can't come in with open water. They have to be opened right there. And maybe behind this.
Yeah.
Maybe behind this, years back, this is where all these rules came. But our inspectors in California, they're top, bro. They're top, We're second to none, And this coming from people from all over the world. Andy Foster and Mark Ralia, they run it like the military, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't even stop a fight in California unless it's through our inspectors, the guy in the black suit.
Yeah.
So if you want to throw in the towel, if it's not from the inspector, I don't have to listen to it. But if it's an inspector telling me, Ray, they want the fight stopped. But if that was me and I heard that, I would obviously tell the inspector, what's up with that water, Well, why are they saying that? But mind you, I got to do that in a 1 minute period.
Yeah.
Just like I'm going to ask you guys a question, not to change the subject. What do you think of instant replay?
For me, I think I'm also a soccer fan. I like soccer, and for a long time there was this argument like, hey, we don't need instant replay, and we had situations where no era un penal and all that stuff. You always have like situations where there's controversy. I'm glad that they instituted instant replay, because what's wrong with going back? Everyone is human, right?
Thank you.
So sometimes a perfect example
Tell
is
the fans that.
everyone is human.
Including Ray, Hall of Fame referee.
A perfect example that I can think of recently, Tony Weeks, one of the best referees of all time. My favorite fight ever.
Morales Castillo.
Exactly.
My God.
My favorite fight. He was a key player in that fight, because when Diego took out his mouthpiece, instead of taking more time and giving more advantage to Chico, may he rest in peace, of course, he went directly to the corner, and as he went to the corner, he was telling the judges, hey, point here. So, perfect referee, right? He makes, in my opinion, a mistake stopping Barroza and Rolly a little early, and here we are, all the fans like piling on this legend. And I personally don't like that. I don't like it when that happens. It's like, we're human, so why not institute instant replay so that we can give these legends, these referees that have such a tough job.
We got to make that decision in a split second, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you don't agree with it?
No, so I didn't, because aside from being a boxing fan, I'm a big baseball fan.
Okay.
And baseball is one of those sports.
They're
just
doing
like,
that now, though.
Yeah. So and I'll tell you what changed my mind.
Don't say nothing about the Dodgers, bro.
I'm a big. I was born on October 15th, '88, which is the day that Kirk Gibson hit the home run.
Wow.
So it's in my blood.
All right. There you go.
But
you can talk about the Angels.
I'm good. I'm Dodgers.
No, but there a couple of years ago, before they implemented instant replay in baseball, and again, like I was saying, boxing, like baseball, is one of those throwback sports that when they start adding shit or changing rules, you're like, no, you're changing the dynamic of the sport. But there was this one famous situation where a veteran Hall of Fame umpire made a really bad call that cost a pitcher a perfect game with 2 outs left. The pitcher's name was Galarraga, and ground ball to first. They got it there in time. He called it an out, and when you see the replay, he was out by a foot, and the umpire called him safe, cost him a perfect game. The perfect game turned into a no-hitter. So that's like, again, it wasn't a new umpire that had never umped the game, but this was a veteran Hall of Famer, like Carlos said, like you said, everybody's human, and there's nothing wrong with having an extra safety net there to make sure that you're making the right call. So, that's my personal reason why I wasn't a fan of it initially, but now I am.
For me, it's also about the fighters, because boxing is one of those sports where taking an L really matters, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a situation, this isn't like MMA or UFC, which I like that part of MMA and UFC. If you take a loss, it's fine. You could be on the main card the next event. And I think we keep on talking about fans, but fans in boxing, we gotta understand that sometimes if you're fighting the best, you're gonna lose, and you shouldn't stop supporting a fighter just because they take a loss. That's part of
everybody's
the game.
Floyd.
Not everyone's Floyd.
Yeah.
Not everyone's Rocky Marciano, Finito Lopez.
Let me interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
And I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but Blue Lopez,
Yeah.
out of Reseda.
Yeah.
His father was the other Lopez. I knew him actually. Yeah. He passed away already, but Lopez brings it every time.
Yeah.
Brings it every time. He dropped Valdez in his last fight when he fought Valdez, but he ended up losing. I think Russell Moore stopped it for whatever reason. I love Russell Moore, but Blue Lopez, he brings it every time. With him, it doesn't seem to bother the fans when he gets L's. He's got about 3 losses.
Yeah.
Actually, his last 3 fights, I think, were losses, but he brings it every time. You know what I mean?
There's certain
But
fighters.
you're
like
right,
that.
though. Losses in boxers, man, it could just throw them back, almost to the back of the line.
Yeah, and it's those are sometimes it's almost like an exception, because you have fighters like Gotti, right? It didn't matter if Gotti won or lost, but I think if we want to be better fans of boxing, even if your fighter loses, support them, because they need our support. This is how they feed their families. And I think that's something that boxing, should really be more, just be a little bit more gracious, right? A little bit more lenient with some of these decisions. We'll do one more fight. So for me, this is one of my favorite moments in recent modern boxing history. I know how I feel about it as a fan, but I want to know how you feel about it as a referee. We'll put the volume a little bit up. This is J80 here. Great fight, Roy Jones and Antonio Tarver 2. So this is what happens here.
I got a question. You got any excuses tonight, Roy? Let's not ask questions like that. Let's go to work.
So in that scene, obviously J80 asks, like, do you got any questions? And Antonio Tarver interrupts with this. How does that feel as a referee?
I let him say what he has to say.
Yeah.
Let him say what he has to say. And after, though, it's a rule. You're not supposed to be verbally talking during the fight.
Yeah.
As long as they don't overboard, I just let it go. But if they start, talking too much, hey, stop the talking. But in that particular, it actually made the fight that much more exciting.
I agree.
Yeah.
I actually wow, just like the hype before weigh-in. I personally like the gentleman style.
Yeah.
When Shane Mosley fought Oscar, they shook hands. When Andy Ruiz fought Chris Arguello, they shook hands.
Yeah.
All that back and forth, bro, I don't know, man. It's just not me. Or the fathers calling each other out, like, come on. But hey, everybody's different, Yeah. But that particular fight, I was actually watching it. We were having a party at my house to watch it, and that just like, wow, you know what I mean? I like, oh, this is gonna be a good fight. Didn't he knock him out?
Yeah, he did.
knocked
It's
him
the
out.
second round. Yeah, it's a storied, legendary moment in boxing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, no 2 fights are the same.
That's
You
right.
Prepare for anything. So those type of moments, I think, give every fight their personality, right?
Yeah.
Every fight is different. Thank you for giving your opinion on these moments. We like to end our interviews with a fun, on a fun note, right? We touched on a lot of deep topics and serious topics. So we're gonna do a couple of questions each, rapid fire questions. So
And
first
I
thing
used to box, bro, so I'm a little slow. Give me a couple seconds.
yeah, we will.
they're easy questions. So I'll start off with the first question.
And before you do it, I want to ask you one other question that I thought of when doing this review. So, if you had two options of fights to be involved in, so fight number one is an all-time legendary, the best fight that you can think of. I'm thinking Mickey Ward, Arturo Gatti. I'm thinking Diego Corrales versus Castillo, Hagler Hearns type of deal. So you can be involved in that fight, and in that fight you do such a good job that no one talks about the referee. So you have that option, fight number one. Option number two is you're involved in a really good fight, but in that fight you do something that's, as a referee, stellar. Something like what Jack Reiss did, where he allowed Tyson Fury to get up, and that led to not just one of the best modern day trilogies, but also training for referees of saying like, hey, this is what this guy did, and this is what we're gonna base on training on because this was a defining moment in the fight. So you have those two choices. Which fight would you rather be involved in?
Where I don't have to do nothing.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I'd rather not have my name brought up at all.
All right.
You know what I mean? Because no matter how perfect a referee is, like you said, I had to do something and maybe I was agreed with by majority. There's still that one, oh, well, you should have done this, you should have done that, you know? I'd rather just do the fight, oh, that was a great fight, and somebody say, who refereed it?
Yeah.
Oh, it was Ray Corona, Popeye Ray. That's what I want, you know? I think I would have, if I could go back in time, the one you just showed, Pryor and Alexis Arguello.
Yeah.
That was just, it was a tearjerker, because remember Alexis Arguello on the second one, he cried after he was, I'm sorry, you know? I just like, oh!
Just couldn't do
You know
it.
what I mean? You know what I mean? I would have loved to be in that referee, that fight, you know? Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're gonna do the rapid fire?
Yeah, we'll go 1 and 1. We'll switch off.
Go
So
slow, bro. 'Cause my wife even says, man, I think you're punchy. Eh?
all right. First question: Zappin' Roger or Slice Lickin' Wicked?
Slice licking the wicked.
All right. American Me or Blood In, Blood Out?
American Me.
All right.
Dickies or Ben Davis?
Dickies.
58 Impala or 53 Bel Air?
53, bro. That's me, Holmes.
All right. And one final one. You know, Sunday afternoon, maybe after church or something. Where's a better place to spend an afternoon? Santa Fe Springs Swap Meet or the Pomona Swap Meet?
Santa Fe Springs Swap.
Yeah. All right.
It's a legendary place.
It's a cool spot.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, Ray, thank you so much, man, for coming out and sharing your story with us and giving us your opinion on all these fights. Why don't you tell our fans, we know you have a great podcast. Why don't you tell our fans where they can find you?
Well, first of all, subscribe to theirs, Corner to Corner. That there's enough work for all of us guys, enough conversation, enough just insight in boxing. So subscribe to you guys. I appreciate you. My podcast is Third Man in the Ring. It's just a view from a referee's perspective. But if you want to go on, you can go on YouTube, Third Man in the Ring, or Ref Popeye Ray. But I just want to thank you guys again for having me on. And hey, God bless, guys.
Thank you. To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. A couple of things I want to highlight. Make sure you subscribe to Ray's podcast, The Third Man in the Ring. It's a great insight from a referee's perspective. He also brought up soularbiter.com, where if you want to get an idea what it's like to be a referee, it's a good opportunity to take some training with the legendary Jack Reiss. And this has been another installment of Corner to Corner Boxing, where we cover all angles of the sweet science. Thank you.
Thank you.